Hello, and welcome to Your Sparkly Brand, the podcast for badass game-changing business owners who aren't afraid to sparkle and stand out. We're all about fighting the status quo in marketing and branding so you can reach more people and make more money. Coaches, creatives, and thought leaders, here you'll discover how to become magnetic AF so you can build and scale your sparkly empire. I'm Lauren Tassi, your copywriter and launch strategist, and I'm joined by my co-host, the branding and web design queen, Megan Gersh. Hey, Megan.
Hey, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. We are delighted to have the host of the Mad Marketing Mums podcast on the show today, Clementine, Holman, and Kryshla Salaris. Clem is the queen bee of Honeybee Social, where she helps businesses systematize their socials and grow their communities without the ick factor. She left the corporate space in favor of assisting people-centered businesses who struggled to find their footing on social media and felt overwhelmed by the work involved in creating and posting content. Outside of work, you'll most likely find Clem roaming around her bush property, trying and potentially failing to grow some bush tucker, or seeking out the newest local culinary delight Sydney has to offer.
And I'm going to introduce Kryshla. She's an Instagram and content marketing coach and the founder of Shall We Social, helping women grow their business online with sustainable strategies designed to work for you and your business. With over 12 years of experience in social media marketing, Kryshla has had the pleasure of working with hundreds of small business bosses and savvy service providers inside her courses and via one-on-one coaching, including copywriters, dietitians, authors, photographers, beauty and fitness professionals, designers, stylists, and coaches. Her mission is to give you the confidence and skills to show up with style on any social media platform, especially on video. Welcome to Your Sparkly Brand.
Yay, thank you.
All right, so before we start off each episode, we'd like to jump into our sparkly moment of the week. This is like a little win or a celebration. It's just something that made you feel good and, well, a little bit sparkly. So, Lauren, if you want to kick us off, what was your sparkly moment this week?
You know, I'm starting to do some new lead gen techniques, some stuff that wasn't working for me in the past. I'm tweaking it, kind of trying some new avenues. So I'm excited about what I've prepared. I'm ready to get it out there.
Love it. Yeah. So I think I might have mentioned this last week, but I am fully committing to pivoting my business towards the music industry. And in the past week, like since I've decided that in my business, I feel like the universe has been like sending me signs that this is like, I'm on the right path. Just over the weekend, I saw a few friends that I know in the music industry and like we were chit-chatting, and it's just like, I keep seeing these different things in my life that just like, it just feels like the right direction. So it really, really feels good to, you know, feel like you're on the right path. So Clem, do you have a sparkly moment you want to share?
Do you want a marketing specific one or do you want a non one?
It could be anything.
I think I'm going to give you the non-marketing one because I was so pleased with myself when this happened. All right. So the bane of anyone's existence when they go to the airport, right, is the traffic to get in to go and pick someone up, right? I'm based in Sydney, Australia, and it's like traffic at peak hour here is horrible, but the traffic to the airport is horrible 24/7. And there's this huge queue or this huge line to get into the parking lot that was like a mile long, and people were trying to cut me off the whole time. There's this lane that no one's going down. So I decided, all right, screw this. I'm going to go down this lane. I ended up bypassing the entire kilometer of parking queue to jump in front of everybody because no one was using this third parking gate that took you in the exact same direction as everyone else. I felt so smart. I was like, you genius. Screw you guys trying to cut me off. I've just cut in front of you again.
I love that. And that is definitely sparkly. So Kryshla, do you have a sparkly moment you want to share?
I do. I have relaunched my signature online course and group coaching program. I actually put it into retirement at the end of last year in favor of doing another program, which I am still doing, but I kind of missed it. It's like, you know what? I'm just going to bring it back. So like John Farnham or Barbara Streisand having a comeback. So my program's Instagram Unpacked, and I've just relaunched that. Module 1 actually landed yesterday. So that's been, I guess, my big sparkly moment, bringing that out of retirement back into the world. And I'm really pleased with that decision. So yeah, that's been my past week, aside from having a nasty cold. So that's why I'm a little bit husky at the moment, but we'll just pretend, you know, I've been smoking a packet of cigarettes a day or something.
Why don't we kick things off by talking a little bit about sharing your journey? How did you come to start your businesses? Clem, if you want to start.
Yeah. So it kind of, I think with so many marketers' stories, I kind of just fell into it. My husband, a decade ago, started his own smart home security business. And as with any small business, he had zero budget, but he knew that he needed a, website and some sort of digital digital presence. And so he looks at me, he's like, oh, you did a diploma in this kind of stuff and you're on Facebook. You can do this, couldn't you? So, that's when I started diving in and learning how to build websites, and through YouTube videos or even and then starting to use Squarespace and progressing to doing all their social media content, blogs and stuff. And I realized that I loved it so much that I wanted to do it full time. So I ended up kind of pivoting my career out of customer service and more into marketing, and found a job with a multinational company here in Australia. And, through that, growing a lot of my contacts and network. And they all started to come to me asking me questions and tips for their side businesses, for their full-time roles. And then eventually I went, well, there's a gap here of, I guess, consultants or even coaches of the kind that will help someone that has no time because they have, a full-time role or they're parents or something. Maybe I can fill this gap. And when I put the announcement out that I was quitting my full-time job to go into being the queen bee of Honeybee Social, I think I got 2 clients off of that one post. So it was obvious that I was doing the right thing. And, that was 3.5 years ago now. So it was like maybe 6 months before lockdown. And here we are. We're here now. I'm still here. Honeybee Social is still here. And we now have a podcast, and we're now on Your Sparkly Brand podcast. So yeah, that's my story.
How did you end up focusing on social media? Like, if you started doing everything in marketing, is it what you loved? Is it where you saw the most success? What made you sort of go in that direction?
2 things. One of them was at my full-time role, the head of the digital marketing manager was like, I absolutely hate social. Is there any chance that you want to get into it? And I went, yeah, sure. It's one avenue of marketing that I kind of had fun with and wanted to learn more about. And so I ended up just doing all the socials for that company and a few other ones. But I think what really appealed to me was the fact that you could very much be completely yourself on it, and how there were so many people that were willing to, within that business as well, they didn't necessarily want to be seen, but they wanted to, hey, look at what we're doing. Let's do something fun. Let's try this out. It was a way for me to be able to try and experiment, because there was almost like no such thing as best practice, because social media just evolves so quickly that it's like things that you were doing 5 minutes ago might not necessarily be the best thing to do now, or might not be the best way to do things now. It was just such a constant learning experience at a speed that I loved, that I just kind of got stuck into it.
I love that. And so, Kryshla, can you tell us a little bit about your background as well?
My background, I actually studied psychology and criminology and did postgrad criminology back when I lived in New Zealand. I thought I was going to be a criminologist. That was my path. I wanted to do geographic profiling and like mapping of cities and looking at hotspots for crime and cool stuff like that. And then I moved to Australia on my way to go and live in London. And so I moved here with the idea of staying for maybe 6 months. Ended up being here 2 years, and I was like, okay, I've got to get to London now. But in that time, I couldn't get a government job because you needed to be an Australian citizen. So I kind of fell into working in event management, continued doing that in London. And then I decided after London, this was my sliding doors moment, to come back to Australia rather than to move back to New Zealand. Came back working in events, and I was actually attending another conference back in 2009, back in the day, and happened upon a session about social media marketing. And I was like, we should do this for our business to promote our events. So I went back, and fortunately, I worked for a non-profit organization where it was a small team. So you kind of did a lot of things, you had many hats. I went to our CEO at the time and I said, I think we should be doing social media for our business. And he's like, cool, write a strategy, you can do it. So I just got it. And that's how I started. And if I look back at that strategy, cringe. It was terrible. I was doing everything wrong. But like Clem said earlier, back then, you use social media quite differently. We didn't kind of have any framework or direction for it. It was like the Wild West of marketing. And so over time, I obviously honed my social media skills and general marketing skills. I was doing that as well as the full-time events role as well. I'm managing a team of 5 people. And so after a few years, I ended up going on maternity leave with my first son. And while I was on maternity leave, a former colleague of mine had gone and started working with her sister, and they came to me and said, could you write us a social media strategy? And I was like, yeah, sure, I can do that. I delivered it, and they said, could you just do it for us? Because it's a lot of work. I was like, oh yeah, I suppose I could. Next thing, they'd referred me to someone else, and suddenly I had 2 clients and this business sort of just fell into my lap. And I thought, well, I could do that instead of going back to managing events, because event management obviously has really long hours. It's not ideal when you have a baby. And so that's how Shall We Social was born. And I started out very, very broad, looking at all types of social media management and doing the social media management tasks. And after a couple of years, I was like, I'm sick of doing it for people. There's only so many clients you can take on when you're doing one-to-one work. So that's when I really switched that focus first to one-to-one coaching, and then to actually creating my first course, which is the one that I've actually brought back from retirement back in 2019. And since then, I've created some other courses and doing these group coaching programs. So it's really just evolved very organically and kind of fell into my lap. But it's something that I am absolutely obsessed with and really enjoy doing. And I think if you have that passion, you're going to, stick with it and get the best out of it.
All right. So we're talking about social media today, and I love it because I'm not on there all the time, but I love to hear what's working. And especially because it changes so fast. It's like whatever we talked about 3 months ago isn't relevant anymore. Kryshla, how can business owners level up their social media bio to promote their professional reputation while still connecting with their audience? How do we build that? Whether it's the bio on the page or like our bigger sense of bio, how do we do that so we can connect with our audience?
I think there's a few ways to do this, and what's working right now for sure, I think, and this is what I advise my clients and students, is you need to show up. You need to show your face. I'm sorry, that's it. There may be people who don't want to hear this, but especially if you're a service provider, and that's who I tend to work with most, you are the product. You can't be hiding behind product photos. You are the product, and people need to be able to connect with you, to get to know, like, and trust you in order to work with you. So I think that would be first and foremost the number one thing that you need to do. And even if that feels a little bit uncomfortable, and of course it will at first. I don't know if you remember the first time you went on a video, Lauren, or, remember when Instagram stories first came out and people were freaking out about getting on and showing themselves. But now we do it all the time. It's just something, that we just do in our day-to-day without even thinking about it. So first and foremost, I would say if you want to create that connection with your audience, that emotional connection, showing up on the video is the absolute best way to do this. And if we get geeky here with a bit of neuroscience, basically, if you're showing up and talking to someone on camera, as we're doing right now, your brain doesn't know the difference between doing this through a screen versus doing this in real life. And we know that friendships are formed through seeing people on a consistent or on a frequent basis. And so it's the same thing with your social media. So if you're appearing in somebody's stories a day, on their feed, on the TikTok's For You page, you're going to create that connection just naturally. Also, especially in this time where there's a lot of AI going on and people are copying and pasting, stuff that they've just had automatically generated, you actually showing up, showing your face, sharing your voice and your unique perspective is what is going to cut through all of that automatically generated BS and actually create that connection and show that you're a real person and that you know what it is that you're talking about. So I would say that's the absolute number one thing you can do in terms of, I guess, your social media overall. And if we want to get specific with our bio, it is, I think, really tapping into what your audience needs. So making it about them and not about us. So using words like you instead of I, when you're even just putting your value statement into that written bio. And look, Lauren, I know you'll be much better at this than I am as a professional copywriter, but even just that little tweak there and thinking about your end user, who you want to connect with and what they actually need help with, it's just going to help you reframe that you show up and deliver your messages.
Clem, anything to add to that?
No, I think Kryshla read my mind and said everything that I would have said.
I love it. So let's shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about omnipresence approach to social media. So we hear a lot about like, oh, you need to be on multiple channels. What is that all about? How can the listeners tap into this? How can they approach that omni-channel approach without burning out?
I'll take this one, Kryshla. So we hear a lot about people going, you need to be everywhere. You need to be, all over the place, et cetera, et cetera. But let's reframe that a little bit. What you should really be thinking of is how do do my ideal clients love to learn? Where are their playgrounds that they like to hang out in? It doesn't mean that you need to be everywhere. It means that you need to be where your pie in the sky, your dream clients like to hang out. So that might mean that you really are only on a small handful of channels versus everywhere. Because as we all know, as business owners, if you try and spread yourself thin, you're going to get overwhelmed, you're going to burn out, and you're not going to put out a caliber of content that you, in fact, are very proud of. So I think one of the most strategic ways, I think, to growing a presence or taking that omni-channel approach to growing online is thinking about, where people are learning, but then also what's the most fun way of doing content for you? Because then it's just going to be so much easier to distribute. But how it all works, there's no right or wrong answer about how an omni-channel works. But I think really what it is in the end, it works if you're in the right spot because you are teaching and you are being that industry expert in that one spot where your perfect client is absorbed and is learning and likes to hang out. So I think what an omni-channel approach really is all about, it's not about being everywhere all at once. It's about being where your dream clients are and where they like to hang out and where they like to learn. And if someone says that social is not a place to learn, you obviously are not on TikTok, or you obviously are not on, say, even Instagram. I find Instagram is becoming a big learning hub as well. But I think being for an omni-channel approach to work, you have to be very strategic, as with everything in marketing.
It's about having your channels and your message connected as well across your different touch points, because as we know, it takes multiple touch points. Who knows how many these days, many touch points to get people obviously to that point of being ready to buy from you. I would say omni-channel marketing, for those who aren't familiar with this term, basically there's a couple of ways to look at it. Either you're creating that same customer experience across multiple touch points and platforms, or it's more of a multi-channel experience where you're making sure that you're showing up on different platforms. And that really comes back to what your business goal is. So are you trying to create this really cohesive experience so that your customers come to you and say, I see you everywhere I look on the internet, there you are, and creating that consistency across platforms? Or are you just trying to get your message out to as many different places as possible, perhaps to grow on a particular platform or to move people from those social media platforms over to your email marketing, over to your website, whatever that next step is? But I think the core purpose behind all of this is staying front of mind, because the internet is a really busy place, right? On Instagram, and that's, my favorite platform, I hang out there the most, there's like 2 billion, with a B, 2 billion monthly active users. So you need to be popping up all the time to remain front of mind, because I don't know about you, I follow a lot of people and I don't remember what every single one of them does or what they sell or even that they exist for some people if I don't see them all the time. So I think this is where this idea has come from. A couple of years ago, it used to be go all in on one platform, dominate on one platform. And then people started having issues such as their accounts being disabled and losing everything. Yes, Megan, you put your hand up. I've had mine disabled twice on Instagram, and it is heartbreaking, absolutely, for all the time and love and energy that you put into your content. But it's also a good wake-up call to say, hey, you can't just put all of your eggs into this one social media basket. So I think it's about giving yourself that peace of mind and future-proofing your content, as well as growing and connecting with different audiences. And then when you have that audience, of course, stay in front of mind, because when people first discover you, they might not be ready to buy for various reasons. But if you're popping up day in and day out, when they get to that point and they're like, hey, I actually need the thing you're selling, you're going to be the person that they think of.
I'm so freaking glad that we're talking about this, because I am right in the thick of my account on TikTok is still gone. And so I'm so glad that I have put in the effort, working on building my email list, working on my SEO and all of these other channels, because I would have had nothing had I not been working on that multi-channel approach. When this happened, it literally happened out of the blue, and it's something that you never think is going to happen to you. And then it happens, and then you're just what do I do now? And that's why I think this is such an important conversation to have, is even if you're just focusing on making one piece of content and putting it on multiple platforms, you can still grow those other platforms that are less of a priority for you in your omni-channel approach. It doesn't have to be, every channel is getting equal amount of effort. It can just be taking the, what I call like the lazy approach to, creating content once and then putting it in multiple places.
Oh, lazy is where it's at. Like time-saving shortcuts are my love language. We actually interviewed Hanny from repurpose.io over on our podcast last week, and he made a really great point about this. Obviously, he's all about repurposing content. Hello, that's his whole business. But he said, look, your content might not perform the same on every single channel, and that's okay. If you have a TikTok video that's reached 20,000 people on TikTok, and then you pop it over on Instagram and it only reaches 100 people, that's still 100 more people who have seen your brand and your business and to know you that little bit better. 100 people who wouldn't have seen that content if they're not also on TikTok. So I think people can get really caught up in those numbers and the reach and all of that. So it's important to remember that this approach is allowing you to get in front of some people who may not otherwise have seen you. And that's why it's so valuable.
I'm curious too. This is I just had a question pop into my mind. I'm curious to get your take on this. I know a lot of people get hung up on the thing of like, oh, if I post it on TikTok, then I can't post it on Instagram. Like, what's your take on that? Like, I know that there used to be a much bigger divide on you can't cross promote between platforms.
So you can cross promote onto multiple channels. What the channels don't like is when there's watermarks. And then also, I'm going to get very nerdy. There's something called a metadata description on every single file on the internet, whether that's a video, an image, etc. If the platform can see on that metadata description, which describes what that piece of content is for a computer program, so that they know who to feed it to on their algorithm, etc. If they can see, say for example, you're posting video from TikTok onto Instagram and it says this was made on TikTok, Instagram's not going to like that because they're competitors. They're a business after all. They want you to be living on their channel. That's their goal, so that they can feed you ads. But when it comes to saying no, you are not allowed to cross promote, or no, that's horrible, you really shouldn't be doing that, etc. I'm sorry, I kind of have to call BS, because some people might not feel like signing up to another social media channel, but they still love to watch videos. They still love to, say, for example, watch Instagram Reels. So if you have something that is of value that you are giving somebody, why would you not put it on your social media platform, that your channel, your account on other platforms? Don't just leave it on just one. So I don't know. I kind of take it as a grain of salt. Now, in terms of, I guess, aesthetics, obviously each channel has got their own vibe going. So what some people do is they, instead of taking, say, for example, their TikTok and putting it straight onto Instagram, they might actually recreate it and make it a little bit more polished. That's not my style. But when they do that, they still are doing the same theme of whatever that value is within that video. But again, to me, it does the same work twice. And why would you want to do that when you have many more important things that you could be doing? Plus, if you have that one style and you want to be known as that industry leader with, this quirkiness or that quirkiness, then why not show it, multiple times across multiple channels? And why would you want to redo that video for one particular aesthetic? That's my 2 cents.
I think it's a little bit outdated, that idea of sharing stuff. And I think it goes back, because this is something I used to say to my students, is not to have a carbon copy of your Instagram account and your Facebook account, because back then those were the two kind of key players and people were typically following you on both. Now there are so many more platforms, you don't run that risk so much of people seeing your same piece of content over and over and over again. Even if they are following you on a few different platforms, we know that algorithms, the time of day that you post, when your audience is online, all of those different things come into play, and people might miss your content on one channel but then see it on another. And if you really are a bit worried about having that carbon copy, you can always post something on a Monday on TikTok and then post that video on a Friday on Instagram to kind of overcome that. And that's a good way, of course, of reaching a different audience if they have different consumption habits or times that they are on the app.
I think it's kind of like the same thing when people say, I don't know about you guys, but people have said to me oh, I'll never get a TikTok account. It's okay, well, if you're never going to get a TikTok account, I'm still going to reach you on Instagram or Facebook or wherever you show up. And so that's definitely a factor for me, where it's just I don't don't care as much about like posting on multiple platforms. Also, the thing is like, I've never gotten feedback from somebody that says like, oh, I just saw this on TikTok. Like, no.
Yeah, no one says that.
No, I think we were talking to Todd Collins, and he said the exact same thing. He's like, yeah, he follows both of us on multiple platforms. He's like, I never see the exact same video on every channel. And I mean, like, I don't know how he does it, but he is on every single channel scrolling through. And he's like, no, I never see the same from either one of you, no matter which platform I'm on. So to say that, no, you have to redo your content just to appease one channel, bull.
Yeah, especially if that channel's then going to shut you down.
So one of the great things about social media is that it's free. There's like no barrier to entry. You start a business, you sign up for Instagram, you can get running. Where would be like, if we're ready to invest time, money, what would be a good investment for somebody who is looking to grow? Is it like getting better equipment? Is it investing in a coach? Where would you suggest somebody who wanted to go all in more on social media for their business?
I think the answer to that is going to be the same with any question of, where do they need to go, or how can somebody grow? It always starts with your plan. Now, when you have an omni-channel approach, there's a lot of great tools out there that you can use to create that omni-channel approach. But if you just go and start using them, it just becomes a hot mess. You need to know where each one's like responsibility is and how it's going to work, and have almost like a workflow of where you're going to start. So what I would say is, if you wanted to start growing and you wanted to really just up your omni-channel game, start with, okay, these are all of my channels. All right. So let's say you've got like 5. This is what each channel does. This is the medium that you can post on each one and where you can post them. So say, for example, Instagram for videos, you can post it as reels, but then you can also do it as stories. So you've got 2 spots there. TikTok, you've got your feed. Stories, although they're not really promoting that much anymore. And then there's also, you can do video replies, all of that stuff. There's so many different ways. So you want to find out what those spots are and then work from there in terms of, okay, I'm going to create, say, for example, a video. It's going to go here, here, and here. Then I can use this tool and it can go and cross promote it here, here, and here. This tool here is really good at transcribing or grabbing this. I could use this to create something else for my website, and keeps going and going and going. Before you even go into the shiny baubles and the tools and all that stuff, start with that plan and start going like, okay, this is what I've got to play with. This is what they accept that I can put on each one of these sections. This is how I could potentially do it as well. That's what I think. And you always start with that core question as well. What's the most fun and easiest way for me to create content? Because that's going to determine where it's going to go.
And that's going to keep you consistent. If you enjoy the content that you're creating, I always say lean into your strengths. If you love writing, start out with something written. I know video is at the moment kind of the most popular medium, but again, we don't have to do everything that everybody else is doing. Instead, we should be thinking about what our audience likes to consume, or what our potential customers or clients like to consume, and lean into that and do that then, as you said, Clem, in the easiest way possible. So what is easy for you? And I think no money, no budget, no problem. Like, get your phone, set it up, talk to camera, add some closed captions. You can start out as simply as that. If the message you're sharing is valuable for your audience, you don't have to worry about having apps to do like cool transitions and, clips and funny things like that and sounds. And in fact, sometimes that can be detrimental, especially if one of these platforms removes your sound. There's nothing worse than that happening. You've created this really fun lip syncing video and suddenly it's silent. Instead, just focus on showing up and sharing that value. And of course, that sounds a bit, tired. I know, share some value. And we need to determine what that value is first and foremost. So starting off with your business goals in mind, what is it that you're actually trying to achieve in your business? How can social media help to drive those goals? And how then am I going to show up? What am I going to share in order to do that? So having that really clear plan and process in place, understanding who your audience is. I mean, it all comes back to these basic things as part of a social media strategy. Understanding that audience, what their wants, needs, and pain points are, and then just showing up and simply delivering content that's going to help them with those things. It can be that easy. I think we overcomplicate it and we overthink it. So creating a quick video, and you can either transcribe that if you want to have a written piece of content, and sharing it across multiple channels. You could do it manually if you cannot afford to invest in a tool such as repurpose.io. You can absolutely do it manually. Film on your phone so you've got a nice clean video, upload to each platform, and add those automatic captions, and you're done. So I think we can't let budget stand in our way for something that is predominantly free and a free way to get our business out there.
Now, if you had some budget that you could invest within your business in terms of, say, I would say the most budget-friendly tool, and the one that is an absolute beast, and that I love to call the Henry Cavill platforms, because it's easy on the eyes. It's easy to use, and the whole website experience is just super simple. It lifts a lot of heavy things in terms of, does a lot of heavy work for you in terms of like posting across other channels and such. And again, it's easy on the eyes because, again, Henry Cavill's easy on the eyes, and this website is easy on the eyes. It's repurpose.io. I think it's still $250 a year, but it will take whatever video that you have posted on whatever of your favorite social channel is. So say, for example, TikTok, it can take it, save it without the watermark and without the metadata file in the background saying that it is a TikTok video, save it to your Google Drive or a Dropbox. It can cross-post it onto YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, you name it, without that watermark as well, and do it automatically. Saves me a bucket load of time every single week, not only for my stuff when I do have time to post, but also for my clients as well when they do end up posting, onto TikTok or Instagram. Like whenever their video goes out, we just make a cycle as to, okay, it's going to go here, here, and here. I think that's one of the best tools that you can use as a small business owner, and also one of the most budget-friendly tools as well to start that omni-channel approach too. The other thing though to note is omni-channel is not necessarily all social media channels too. You've got your podcast, you've got a website as well. Those are two channels too that you can use, and Repurpose will help you take like audio from your podcast and create those YouTube videos, or post it straight to your WordPress website if you use WordPress. I think they do it for a couple other website providers. I'm not sure, but it'll also save you that time in repurposing and recreating some style of content as well. So I think that is probably one of the best tools that you could use after you've created your plan and after you've created your omni-channel strategy.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about content ideas, because I know that this is a big sticking point for a lot of business owners. So how do we ensure that we don't run out of content ideas? What are some of the tools and resources that you guys like to use when you are fishing for content ideas?
A couple of things that I recommend to my clients. First and foremost, obviously, you need to know your customer. You need to start with those questions that you're receiving, the comments that you're getting on your posts, the actual engagements that you're having with your real life customers or clients. So start there, take all of those comments, take all of those questions and put them somewhere central. I recommend something electronic rather than a notebook. So when you're out and about and you have an idea, you can just dump it into there on your phone. So Asana is a great tool for this. Trello is a great tool. You could use a Google Sheet, just something that you can access both on desktop and on phone, and just dump those ideas in as they come to you. Because when you sit down at your computer to create content, that's not when all the ideas flow, right? I don't know about you, but they tend to come up in the shower. And apparently you can get a waterproof whiteboard, which would be amazing for that reason. Because, this is the thing. Or you go out for Lauren and Megan, you both have dogs. So I can guarantee you're out there walking your dogs and all the ideas are churning. This is why you need, I think, somewhere centralized and electronic that you can just capture all those ideas in their rough format as they come to you. Perhaps you're scrolling on Instagram and you see something and you think, oh yeah, I could recreate a version of this, for my niche, and take that screenshot, and just having somewhere to be able to dump it, I think is a great way of ensuring that you've always got a bunch of ideas when you do sit down to create that content. The other thing is actually spending some time then researching or generating those ideas. So purposely sitting and generating ideas. And there are so many different ways you can do this. There are a bunch of different websites and tools you can use. Of course, ChatGPT. This is a great tool for content ideas. It's not great for the end product. You can prompt it by saying, this is my ideal customer. These are the things that they are struggling struggling with, this is my product or service, this is how I help my ideal customer, give ChatGPT all of that information and say, can you generate 10, 20, 30, 50 ideas that I could use to create a TikTok video script on this topic? And you can absolutely do that. Pick through, choose the ones that sound good to you, because some of the stuff it produces isn't going to be amazing, let's be honest. Or you may combine a couple of ideas into one, but it also just sparks more ideas when you kind of go through this brainstorming process. Answer the Public, that is a fantastic website where you can pop in a couple of keywords and it will show you all of the different questions people are asking related to those keywords. And then I would say, with this in mind, you then want to be focusing on the evergreen content that you can create, because this will allow you to post it across multiple channels, but also to reuse it in a month, 2 months, a year's time, depending on how evergreen that content is, because it doesn't date. So I think if you approach it in that way, you will literally never run out of content ideas. And you can take something that you've already created and either repost it as is or tweak it if you need to update some information within it, and share that again, time and time again, and across those different platforms.
I like to go into Facebook groups. We've done I think a couple of episodes on Mad Marketing Mums podcast where it's actually been a question that's been asked in a Facebook group, and we've been able to answer it through the podcast. That's always, I think, a really good spot to find those like really like deep level questions. I find like you'll always get the like, what's the best platform to use for this? But sometimes there's some really good meaty questions that you'd be able to answer as content. Another great spot is in the comments, whether that's on your video or a competitor's video or, you know, a colleague's video. No matter whether that question's already been answered, you're going to have a different spin to it compared to everybody else. So don't think that, you know, just because it's something that somebody else has answered or that 20 other people have answered, someone out there is going to want to listen to your opinion over your competitor's opinion. So why not post it?
And if you can duet and remix, depending on what, as a way of adding your 2 cents to that conversation, I think as well. I can't remember who said it, but I really love this idea that you don't have to be the expert in the conversation. You can be a contributor and you can add your 2 cents in your life experience or your clients' stories or your own, you know, before and after transformation story. And that still adds value and it's still relevant, people, without you being a quote unquote expert on that particular topic.
I really like that concept because I work with a lot of coaches and they always feel like, oh my God, everyone else is a coach. Everyone's already saying it, like, and it leads to this like feeling of stuckness or like, I don't have anything valuable to say. Everyone else is already saying it. Do you have any other tips for sort of overcoming that feeling that like you have nothing worth saying?
Just fucking post it, for God's sake. Like, that's the mum in me. The only way you're gonna know what's on the other side or of that tunnel of, let's say, be metaphorical, that tunnel is your fear. You know, the only way you're gonna know what's gonna happen on the other side is if you go through it. So if it absolutely bombs and it's horrible and no one views it, well, okay, fine. You learn something from it. If it does incredibly well, awesome. But I think to get over that fear and that hurdle, that's only one thing inside of you. And just the fact that I see so many people that are camera shy or they're like, that's already been said, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, you're actually undervaluing yourself and why you love what you do if you're not going to go and say it and be a contributor to the conversation. So just fucking post the damn thing.
You don't get that sense of confidence by sitting around and waiting. Action creates confidence. I'll say it louder for the people in the back. Action creates confidence. Doesn't happen the other way around. So you don't wake up one morning and say, yes, I feel like creating a TikTok. And off you go and you create this incredible TikTok. You start out by taking that action and creating these sometimes crappy videos. If we all scroll back to our first posts, cringe. And if you're not looking back and cringing, you're doing it wrong, right? You need to look back and cringe because it means that you've made that progress and you're growing your confidence, not only in terms of the way that you show up, but in terms of you being able to use the platforms, all the tools, the editing, all of that good stuff too. So I think absolutely just post the thing. And yes, everything has been said before, time and time and time and time again, but not everybody has heard everything before. So if you've got new followers who haven't heard these messages before, people who, if you're working with business owners, for example, school, or you're working with new parents. They have never before focused in on, I don't know, how to swaddle your baby because they haven't needed to. That hasn't been relevant to them. So they've never heard that message before. But once they are in that space and they need that thing, they need to hear those messages. They need to learn these things. And if you are there delivering them, they're going to become endeared to you and your brand. And of course, you're going to help them along the way. So why wouldn't you want to do that?
It's like one of those things where like no one cares if you're wearing makeup and you show up on video. Like no one cares what you're wearing. It's like, you know, we're all so much in our own heads when it comes to those things that it like sometimes can become a stumbling block for us. And so I think what you said, what both of you have said is just so golden, just to like freaking do it. It's like you need to get in those reps in order to get better at that skill.
And I think it's a willingness to show up and maybe feel a bit awkward, to sit with that discomfort, if we want to use some psychological terminology here. You need to have that willingness to do these things that feel a little bit hard in your business. You do your tax. Does anyone like doing tax? No, yuck. Oh, there might be some people listening who enjoy it. Most of us, we don't enjoy doing it, but we do it because it's necessary for our business. And if we don't do it, there are negative consequences. If we don't show up and build that connection with potential customers or clients, we don't get them working with us, especially if you have an online business. So you need to kind of put your own feelings aside, focus on the person that you're showing up for, because they're following you for a reason. They actually want to hear from you, but also focus on your business goals and what you're ultimately trying to achieve, and treat this as a business, not just a fun little hobby. You're here to grow your business, and these are the tools that you've chosen to use. So just show up and use them. And that's a little bit of tough love, but I feel like you just need to hear it sometimes. And look, I'm guilty of sometimes overthinking and not posting either. But when you do, you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad.
So let's talk a little bit about burnout and how we can avoid that. So obviously social media moves fast. You know, there's a lot of competition. There's a lot going on every day. So if somebody is experiencing that social media burnout, you know, how can we avoid that in the first place? How do we get out of it? Let's talk about it.
Set yourself up with some systems for creating your content. That you want to have things such as templates, repeatable formulas, batch creating your content, and really leaning into those content types that you enjoy creating. So if you can have that kind of set up, and obviously I'm assuming that we've got a plan, we know what we want to do with our business, we've got our social media strategy, but day to day, having that kind of system for your content is going to help you produce it much faster, so you can just get on with the other things that you want to do. And when I say repeatable formulas, look at what's actually working. If you've previously posted a bunch of stuff and you've got that data available to you, amazing. What type of videos are working? What's resonating with your audience? Recreate those by tweaking the topic, tweaking the messaging that's kind of going with that content. But don't be afraid to use stuff time and time again. So one thing that I like to do is I batch record when I've done my hair and makeup. I'll batch record a bunch of little introductions that I can put at the front of videos. So it might be something like saying Instagram tip, or here's an Instagram update that you may have missed, or something along those lines. Little introduction videos on things that I talk about all the time. And having a few things that you talk about all the time is really useful, not only because it makes it easy to decide what to talk about and what type of content to produce, but it also helps to reinforce those key messages to people following your account. So if you can batch create these little videos, then you can use them even when you haven't done your hair and your makeup, or you're sick in bed or what have you, and pop them in front of a screen recording or something along those lines. So you're still showing yourself, but you're doing it in a really low effort kind of way. I would also be leaning into those simple types of content. You don't need to be doing fancy transitions and lip syncing and dancing and all of that stuff. Simply show up, share your message, and add those closed captions. That's enough. Yeah. Don't overthink it. Don't overwork it. We're not professional actors. We're not performers. We don't have to do all the things. And I think one thing small business owners tend to do is we tend to compare ourselves with the full-time content creators and the influencers who are doing these big, elaborate, crazy videos. Good for them. Great. They get paid by the platforms themselves or by the brands that they're working with. You get paid by your customers or clients coming off of those platforms and going onto your own website or sales page or booking that call with you. So you don't need to be doing the same things that professional content creators are doing. Give yourself a break.
I don't know about you, Lauren and Megan, but I've certainly experienced burnout burnout because of things that have been well beyond my control that have happened, and I've needed to take a break so that I could have a conversation with myself. I think there's a difference between overwhelm and then burnout. And you need to know what the signs are of when you are really overwhelmed and when you're at the brink of just completely burning out and closing your doors because you just can't handle it anymore. And you don't even want to look at your phone. So setting some boundaries with yourself, first and foremost. So if you have to put, say, for example, your phone on a timer or put a timer on so that you stop creating content or stop doing something like scrolling through, you can move on to other tasks so you don't feel that overwhelmed, do it. If you have to set yourself the boundary of even taking breaks, and not going on to social, do it. But this is where reposting that content that works really well is going to help you stay consistent, because social media is all about consistency. Algorithms, that's the number one thing that they love to see, is that consistency. So reposting stuff that you've enjoyed, that works, that your audience loves, that will help you when you do need to take those breaks. Now, when you are overwhelmed, your creativity is just not there. You might not even feel like even looking at your phone and filming stuff. This is where that background footage content would work well, so that you don't even have to get in front of the camera and you can still send those messages out. But I think ultimately, if you're at the point where you're just like, I just can't deal with this, I can't handle this, it's okay to take a break. Like if you are that burnt out, take a freaking break. I do it maybe once a month. I will actually go into an area where we have our bush property. There's no mobile phone reception. There's no internet there. I end up not even being near my phone for 24 to 48 hours. And it is so good. I love it, because then I come back and there's a few different ideas there, or I may have actually filmed something while we're on the property because I just needed to get it on camera or onto paper or something. But that wouldn't have happened if I didn't take the break, if I didn't force my mind to just stop and put myself somewhere where I couldn't actually do the things that were causing that burnout. I feel like I went really deep there, but yeah, I think the gist of it is have stuff there so that when you do need to take a break, whether it's sudden, whether it's sick, whether you're super stressed or you need to focus on something, have stuff there that you can just grab and continue sending your message. Or if you're really in a point that you're like, I couldn't be fucked actually doing this as well, take that break, because it's obvious that you need it.
Yep. I have a little content stockpile that I love to dip into. Yeah, it's so handy. And you remember, you can show up also by engaging with other people's content. So you don't have to always be putting out your own content. You can spend some time online reaching out, commenting on other people's posts, watching their videos, replying to them in the DMs. That works just as well, if not better, than slapping out a post for the sake of, I have to post something I haven't posted for a few days. You will actually get a lot more traction online, and you will build those relationships, which is really what we're here for, by going out and replying to somebody's story and starting that conversation. Again, it's just a more low energy way of showing up, but it's still at least working in your favor.
Now, I think we actually did a whole episode on social media overwhelm and burnout in the first season. So if it tickles your fancy, you can, we've got that episode there on the Mad Marketing Moms podcast.
Tell us about your podcast. How did you guys get hooked up? How did you decide this is the type of podcast we want? Who is it for? Give me the spiel.
So we met on TikTok. I think I don't remember who started following who, and I mean, that doesn't matter. But we started following each other, and then ended up doing the Omni-Channel thing and following each other on Instagram, following each other here and there. And I think Kryshla asked me to come onto a webinar with a couple of other marketing people. And that's the first time we really collaborated together. And then must have been like 10 months later or something. I think I got a message from you and Kryshla. And I think it was on TikTok. You're like, hey, you feel like doing a podcast together? And that was October of last year. But yeah, we kept commenting back and forth, and we created this friendship across social, which is exactly what we're telling people to do. And yeah, lo and behold, that's where we got the idea for our podcast. Our ways of keeping in touch were going, can you believe this sleazy tactic that this person has done? How would, how do people actually get absorbed in this kind of stuff? And then we were talking about how being parents and business owners. And that's kind of where it came to be. We got the title for our podcast from one of our TikTok followers too. So
thank you, Miriam.
yeah.
Who is a professional scriptwriter. She's written scripts for TV shows such as Hollyoaks and EastEnders. And yeah, so we're very fortunate to have her. Yeah, I had been thinking about a podcast for a very, very long time. And I talked myself out of it because I'm like, you've got a funny accent. You've got a funny voice. You trip over your words. Nobody's going to want to listen to you. You're not an expert. All of those things, right? We're going around in my mind. And I was like, do you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm going to contribute to the conversation, even if I don't know everything about everything. And so I signed up for a course because I am an online course addict. That is my thing. It's my very bad habit. And I started doing this course. And again, all those horrible voices in my head were saying, you're never going to show up. You're not going to be consistent. You're going to leave it to the last possible minute. You're going to procrastinate on it. And then you're going to let yourself down. You're going to let your audience down. And so I thought, okay, rather than giving into these negative thoughts, how can I overcome this? And so I reached out to Clem and said, do you want to do a podcast? She said, is the Pope Catholic? Because I needed somebody to be accountable to, because I won't do things for myself, but I'll do them for other people. And I also liked the idea of having someone to chat with and bounce these ideas off of and have that natural conversation, as opposed to me just presenting or broadcasting. I just thought it's more valuable for the audience to have a couple of perspectives. And maybe Lauren and Megan, you thought the same when you were deciding to do your podcast. It's kind of more interesting listening to a conversation between people where we can both contribute our ideas and experiences, as opposed to the Kryshla show, right? Where it's just all me. Yeah, so that's kind of how it came about. And we decided to focus on busy parents in business because that's us. That's our season of life, for want of a better term. I actually hate that term, but that's where we are at the moment. And so we wanted to help other overwhelmed parents, because we know what it's like having to juggle all the things. And some days you've got it, it's awesome, everything's firing on all cylinders. Other days it feels like you're walking through a field of Lego barefoot.
I love it. And so just before we wrap up, just a few little rapid fire questions here. So this is something that we love to ask everybody who comes onto the podcast. But if you could go back in time to a point in your business where you were just about to level up in your business and kind of take your business to the next level, what was like the one piece of advice that you would give yourself, or like the one thing that really helped you to elevate?
Yeah, if I go back to a sliding doors moment, really, in that business, it was the first time I lost my Instagram account. It got disabled. And this happened on day one of my course launch for Instagram Unpacked. So the Instagram coach loses her Instagram account the day that she launches her Instagram course. Do you know how embarrassing that was? Like, I still feel like a visceral, hot embarrassment when I think about that. And it was nothing to do with me. I eventually got my account reinstated and they said it was a mistake. It actually happened again about 6 months afterwards. Again, got it back in a couple of days. They said it was a mistake. But the stress, I can't even tell you how awful that felt. You know, Megan, right now you're experiencing that yourself, and fingers crossed you get your account back as well. What I would take from that and go back and tell myself if I could is start this omni-channel approach right from the beginning. So just don't put all your eggs into the one basket. Yes, my audience is on Instagram, absolutely, but they are other places as well. And so I think it's really important that you do take this approach, share your content across multiple channels, and have that as like a backup or future proofing of your content, because you could lose your account in an instant. And not only does it feel terrible, but it does have a detrimental effect on your business. That absolutely tanked my launch because I couldn't get, to as many people. It probably undercut the trust that people had in me. Let's be honest. Yes, I had an email list. Thank goodness I had a wait list for that course. I had other ways of connecting with people, but Instagram at that time really was my primary channel. And so since then I have diversified and made sure that I am paying attention to the other channels, at least as much as Instagram, and sometimes even more. But yeah, that would definitely be my aha, let's change this moment.
I think for me, it was the first time I said no to a prospective client and learning how to say no and not being afraid to say no. And I don't mean just like with potential clients. I mean also you see some hot trend or a new platform or blah, blah, blah. Take it with a grain of salt and look at it from all aspects. projects and don't be afraid to say, no, this isn't the right fit for me. I saved myself a world of pain by saying no to this particular client because of all the red flags that kept popping up before we had even started talking about how we would be working together. And to me, that actually really helped, not only in my approach as a professional, but also build that confidence to go, okay, I said no to one person. I can say no to somebody else if I needed to. But when I did that, the next potential client that rolled around is one of the best clients I've ever worked with. And I would not have been able to work with her if I had said yes to this other person. So I think saying no and actually taking that approach of going, is this actually going to work for me in the long term? Or is this going to be a big headache? How am I going to be able to fit this within my schedule now? Or am I just absolutely just crazy to even think of doing this type of approach? I think taking whatever opportunity you have that's in front of you and looking at it from all sides, the positives and the negatives, that I think is a big game-changing thing, because then it's a lot easier to say no.
So what is coming up for both of you? Like, what projects? Do you have launches? What's coming up on the podcast? Tell us what you're excited about.
Oh, well, as I mentioned earlier, I have brought my signature course and coaching program back out of retirement, which is super exciting. I am at the moment updating all of the course modules because, as you know, Instagram changes every single day. Having an Instagram course makes it really tricky. Things are outdated in a second in terms of the tech tutorials. But what I'm really excited about is the live coaching part of that we're going to be starting in July. And it is so fun. We have a 6-week container of live coaching where I really get to know these business owners and just seeing their confidence grow. Like, I love this. This is what I live for. Like, it's just, I'm selfish. I add the live coaching because I like it just as much as they do. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. In terms of the podcast, we've got some incredible guests coming up, including yourselves, who will be on our podcast next week, which is amazing. So the cool thing about having a podcast, and another reason that I wish I had started it sooner and not listened to all those voices in my head, is you get to meet all these incredible people and learn from them as well. So it's also helping Clem and I to level up our marketing skills as well as our audience.
Yeah, speaking specifically about the podcast, yeah, we've got our cross episode with you two that'll be coming up. Then we've also got an exciting topic that I haven't heard too many people talk about, and it's specifically about competitions and how a lot of people just get it really wrong. So we're going to have one of our colleagues come on and talk about competitions, because that is her whole agency, is just running competitions for brands. So she's going to come talk about that, and I'm really, really excited to talk to her.
Awesome. And so can you guys tell us where our listeners can find you online?
Yes. So we are on TikTok and Instagram at Mad Marketing Mums. That's MUMS, because we are in Australia and it is still part of the British Commonwealth. But then we also have madmarketingmums.com, and anywhere that you listen to your podcast, we're there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Clem and Kryshla. This has been such a pleasure.
Thank you for having us. I love chatting about this. It's so good. It's so lovely to finally meet you. Obviously, we've been connected on TikTok for a little while, but to actually have this chance to chat is always really wonderful and valuable.
Awesome. Yeah, we loved having you on. And thank you so much to our listeners for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And until next time, stay sparkly.